Up next, we have Kaustubh Maske Patil, a programmer at GUI.ai, who will share a creative and practical approach to turn your old laptop and repurpose it as a home server. Despite its broken parts, he was able to turn his outdated laptop into a server that hosts his website, saving him money on cloud hosting. In this talk, he'll guide you through the steps he took, the challenges he faced, the useful hacks he discovered all the way. Whether you have an old laptop gathering dust or are you considering a Raspberry Pi, his insights will inspire you to get started on your home server project. Can we have a round of applause to welcome him?
Hello everyone, I am Kaustubh. I am glad to be on this stage. I hope you are all not too tired after lunch. So I have been part of the FOSS United community for the last couple of years. I was a volunteer for the last two editions, and it's wonderful to now be on stage here. A little bit about me first. So I am Kaustubh. I have been part of the FOSS United community. I've been self-hosting for about 3 years. Last year I conducted a self-hosting workshop at IndiaFOSS and also at a couple of other CityFOSS conferences. And I work at an open source AI startup called GUI.ai, and you can feel free to talk to me about self-hosting, AI, coffee, functional programming, all of this. Just catch me around. So this is about who I am, but I want to tell you about what I really want to be, and that is this, and to be this guy. So I've been racking my brains about how do you be this guy, and it just so happens that Tux, the Linux mascot, went to the Himalayas to meditate on the same question for many years. So the legend goes, when he came back, he had exactly 3 answers. And the first one was you have to write the Linux kernel. So you have to be Linus Torvalds. So, and none of us is Linus Torvalds. Nobody is Linus but Linus. Linus is the creator of Linux, for those who don't know. The second way is to install Gentoo Linux. This is very hard. In fact, I've never even attempted it, but I've only heard horror stories and I would not recommend it. I hugged Tux when I heard the third solution, which was to have an internet server at home. Now, this feels much more approachable to me. And yeah, so what can you do with an internet server at your home? You can utter silly things such as, I live in a data center, right? Fascinating. And you can say, you can call yourself a real sysadmin because you spend hours and hours crying about niche Linux issues. And it's actually super fun. And some other things that you can do, some other things that I love doing with my setup is to remotely access it from any of my devices. I can connect to it from my mobile phone right now, and that's really amazing. It always impresses me. And you can also keep your data away from unwanted AIs, if you get the point. So what I host, so these are like real use cases apart from all the jokes that I can make. So one use case that I really like, with this all simple quality of life improvements, is I can sync notes across all of my devices. So this is with sync thing. I can stream movies, so you can pirate whatever you want. You can have watch parties with your friends, and you can do it without subscribing to OTT services. This Plex Jellyfin, you can securely store your photos in an encrypted manner with Ente. They had a talk in the morning, and they also have a booth. So definitely go check them out. The advantage of Ente is that the photos are encrypted in the server as well. So even if someone gets access to your home server, they still can't access your photos. So, and there are like end-to-end encrypted alternatives for a lot of other things, like even for text. So you get to keep your privacy more than you can with any other service. You can host Minecraft for your friends. If you are in your late teens or early teens for that matter, I highly recommend this for making friends. I did not do this, but please, you can share and access files in the browser. Basic use case, wonderful. You can use Nextcloud. And like a really nice simple use case is to have analytics for your website. So I host my personal website and a few other websites here and there, and I love having a privacy conscious analytics server, and I can self-host it. So it's amazing, and this is just few of the ideas. Feel free to explore, and there's an awesome self-hosted list. You'll get a lot of help. r/self-hosted is the subreddit is great. So what does it take to self-host? Obviously you need a computer, and then you also need a static IP and a domain name. I'll get to what a static IP domain name is and why you need one in a few slides. But static IP is basically like an IP that doesn't change, and a domain name is something like google.com. My domain name is kaustubh.page. So you could imagine it. You can get creative with it. There are a lot of TLDs. The TLDs as in .com is a TLD, so you can get creative and find something that you like. So computer. What kind of computer do you need? Really, you need anything that can run Linux. My tool of choice here was a 5-year-old laptop that I could like barely get any retail value out of if I wanted to sell it. I occasionally used to use it with an external monitor, an external keyboard, and an external mouse because its keypad, display, and touchpad did not work. But it was something like this. It works. It has wheels, it has engine. My laptop has a computer. It runs. What else? So if you don't have an old laptop lying around, there's no excuse for you, because you can use something like a Raspberry Pi. It's very energy efficient. I haven't gotten a huge spike on my electricity bill from using a laptop, but this is even more efficient. So anything works. When making slides for this talk, I thought of, can you host something on your Android phone? And it turns out you actually can. So someone did actually do it, and I was speaking to someone in the community today, and turns out our community the FOSS United community has also done it. So it's very, very doable. And also it turns out that like my laptop is not connected with LAN because it wasn't very convenient for me. So it's a server, like if you look at this photo, there's no LAN cable here. It's a server that runs with Wi-Fi. So technically you could make a server out of a phone using Wi-Fi as well. So you don't need to keep it plugged in all the time. But it's an interesting experiment. Do let me know if you try it. But yeah, static IP and domain name. Static IP you can obtain from your ISP, Airtel, ACT, Jio, whatever you use. I was getting it for 200 rupees a month a few months ago. Now Airtel hiked it to 300 a month, but I'm sure you could like find cheaper deals. Domain names start at about 150 rupees a year, but then you can go as high as you want. But if you don't want to buy one, you can also just reach out to me. So again, no excuse. You ask me, I'll give you a free subdomain and you can do whatever you want with it. And yes, these are some domain name providers that you can go to: Namecheap, Open, Gandhi, there's Cloudflare, and few others. There's a lot of them. So yeah, why do you really need a static IP? So how the internet works, you might, like a vague idea you have in your mind is you go to duckduckgo.com, we are privacy conscious, you search for how to uninstall Windows, as you all should. If you haven't, I highly recommend this search, and then that goes to DuckDuckGo servers, comes back, and you see something in HTML rendered. Now, how the internet really works is a little more sophisticated than this. So the internet doesn't understand DuckDuckGo.com. it understands IP addresses. So you need a layer in between that converts your domain name to your IP address, right? So you want something that can take duckduckgo.com and give you something like 52, 142, 124, 215, whatever, right? An IP address. So that's what a DNS server does. DNS servers have a fixed IP, so you don't need to do a lookup for them. 1.1.1.1 is cloud-based DNS servers. DNS server stands for domain name server, I think. So yeah, so that's the first step. And once your browser has the IP address resolved, it then sends a request to the servers that sit at that IP address and get back some HTML, and you see Linux is awesome, you should uninstall Windows, more tux, and you're happy. So what else? So now you have a static IP, a domain name, a computer lying around. What else do you need? So right now, if you had this setup and tried to connect it, the internet part would be fine. The request would come to your router, but your router would not send a good response. So you'll get an error if you try to access it right now from a browser. So there's a few configuration steps more now. So the router, what you need to do in the router is, so this is what I like to do, and it's very secure. So this is something called port forwarding. What this means is that you're telling the router, whenever you get a request for this ports in networks, so you have 65,000 ports for talking in a network that transmit data. So you can think of these as different threads of data going back and forth. So port 80 is reserved for HTTP, 443 is HTTPS. So you're telling the router that whenever you get a request that is HTTP or HTTPS, you should send this to the computer with so and so MAC address. So you set the MAC address here in the LAN host field, and yeah, there's a link to how you can obtain the MAC address in Linux. So this is easy to configure. So at this point, your requests are going to the router, and the router can then transfer those requests to the server, and the server will then send back some HTML. This is like an enlarged view of the same portal. This, like, your router portal will be at 192.168.1.1. You might not get access to it until you get a static IP. This is another thing that static IP gives you, right? So at this point, your requests are going to your computer. So they're going from port 80 on the router to port 80 on the computer. But your computer is not sending back anything. So because there's no program running on port 80, so now we need to solve that software problem. How do we do it? First of all, we need to install Linux, right? How do you install Linux? There's a bunch of ISOs. Abbas installed is right outside, mostly harmless. That's the perfect question to ask them. They will give you a bootable USB. Just plug it in, good to go. But that is the first step. Now, I didn't know this until I started doing my self-hosting on laptop thingy, that you can just do sudo apt install Ubuntu server or sudo apt install Ubuntu desktop to install all of the packages that need to run on a desktop or a server. So I was running Kubuntu, just KDE with the rest of the Ubuntu thingy, and yeah, I just needed to run sudo apt install Ubuntu server, and then set up the Wi-Fi, and yeah, that was pretty much it for like the base Linux configuration. The rest was just configuring stuff that I wanted to run on top of it. It is very interesting. So yeah, you can, if you have a Ubuntu laptop already, you can just do sudo apt install Ubuntu server. You don't need to do a lot more. So the web server, okay, getting back to the web server that we need to run on port 80 or 443. My tool of choice is Caddy. Now I love Caddy. And I love Caddy because I have used Nginx and Apache, and since I started loving Caddy, I started hating Nginx and Apache. So these are all web servers, and one of the things that Caddy makes extremely easy is that you don't need to manually take care of so-called SSL certificates. So if you want to support HTTPS on your website, you have to get a certificate from an authority, and then you have to have a mechanism to serve it to the browsers so that they can verify that you're actually legit. And Caddy makes that implicit, and not only the initial fetching, there's also a renewal, and Caddy does all of that, so you basically don't even have to think about it, quite literally. That's just one thing, but it also makes a lot of other configuration extremely easy. For example, this is literally a screenshot of a part of my configuration. So I have two sites. sh101 is a static site. So I have a bunch of HTML files in this directory, var www sh101. var www is like the convention for static sites. I just say file server and root, and that's all I need to do to get this working. Right? Of course, I need to have a DNS setup so that these two domain names resolve to my server. But once I do that, this is all I need. Reverse proxy is something you do for dynamic websites. So this is when you have another program that is running on some other port, such as in this case it is 6603. So we talked about 80443. So it's the same kind of port. So this is 6603. So I want all requests that come for plausible.kaustubh.page to go to port 6603. Right? That's the explanation of it. Right? And this makes it so easy, where if you compare it to Nginx or Apache, it's depressing to not even underestimate. So, so the other thing that is very important, or like that is very handy, is Docker and Docker Compose. So what these what Docker allows you to do is run containers. So all you need to know about this virtualization, and you can go into more detail or catch me outside and talk to me more about it, but all you need to know is that almost all FOSS self-hosted software will give you a ready way to use Docker to set up that software. So it's not as intimidating as it sounds as well, like virtualization. Well, it's really quite easy to do if you just follow along with the instructions. This is reliable because it sort of bundles everything that you need to run that software together, and you just need to transfer that and run that single file of sorts. And yeah, so you don't get the problem where something runs on one system and it's not running on the other system. Right? So that's why I highly recommend using Docker, and specifically Docker Compose. Right? The next thing I want to talk about is Tailscale. So, and I only discovered it, I only started using it after I started self-hosting, and it really pained me that I did not use this before, because you don't even need a server. Like you don't even need a home server of sorts to use Tailscale. Like, it's not open source. There is an open source alternative called Headscale, but Tailscale's clients are so easy to set up. You just need to install an app, and all of Tailscale's clients are open source, and they are compatible with this Headscale server, which is like the open source version of Tailscale. So all of it is so easy to install, and what this instantly lets you do is make a private network of just your own devices. So what that lets you do is you can talk between your devices without someone else speaking in, and do that securely. So for my SSH, when I need to SSH into my home server, I use Tailscale. It's not port forwarded. I don't use my public IP for it because I don't want anybody to even attempt to do it, because nobody else should be able to SSH. So SSH is like remote access. I don't want anybody to just be able to do whatever with my server. And I can do the same with any of my other devices. So I can even SSH into my laptop that is not my home server. It is pretty interesting. Some other practical considerations is that obviously you'll have to use some external devices if the device is broken. One suggestion I got was that you can keep your laptop upside down for air and cooling. This actually helped. My laptop, like if you're worried about heating up, it's not really that much of a problem. Like I haven't faced it. Thankfully Bangalore weather has also been kind enough. But yeah, and you can take out the battery if you want. I messed up something with the wiring when I was taking it out, and if I actually try to take it out, I'll break the wires. So I had to leave my battery in, but as a result it serves as a built-in UPS, so I'm not too sad about it. And yeah, you can also use a Wi-Fi if like getting the LAN cable is too inconvenient, which is what I did. And yeah, that is almost about it. So for your curiosity, there's some links. There's r/self-hosted, there's an awesome self-hosted list. Yeah, if you can reach out for help with self-hosting on the FOSS United channel on Telegram, and there's a link to a workshop I did some time ago as well. So yeah, questions?
Okay, I have a question. Tailscale license, it says BSD3.
Yes, Tailscale client, that must be the Tailscale client.
So actually, according to the Tailscale website, it says all of their source code is open source except for their GUI clients for proprietary operating systems like Mac OS or Windows.
I thought the servers were not open source.
Everything about Tailscale is open source.
Oh, even better. Use Tailscale.
Also, I have a question, like instead of a static IP, why can't we use something like a dynamic DNS?
I haven't messed with dynamic DNS. It was easier for me to just use the static IP. That's a good question. I would like to know a story. I did want to get into another alternative to static IP, which might be more. So if you use a static IP, unless you use a VPN, like another VPN, every site you visit from your home Wi-Fi will know what your IP is. They can all basically track you. One alternative is if you still have a VPS, like a very cheap VPS, and there is something called reverse port forwarding that you can do. So it's just SSH minus R, it's just one SSH flag, and that lets you do the same thing but route all of your traffic through some other VPS.
But we can do the same thing with Cloudflare proxies, right?
Or Cloudflare proxy, yeah.
And also, what about Nginx or Apache did you not like that made you switch to Caddy?
The configuration is extremely, like the defaults are terrible. So I always need to end up like, for example, for when I was doing this reverse proxy thing, I always needed to add these few headers. And the other thing is that for Nginx, every website that I host almost needed a file of its own. With Caddy, everything can be in the same file. So it's easier for organization, it's easier for me to read through, see what's online. That's it.
But with Nginx, like I host Nginx at my home and I have everything in a single file. That works.
Yeah, but like you end up with long configurations then.
That I agree.
Yeah. And also you have to manage SSL certificates or you have to like at least do the manual step of certbot, right? So with Caddy, anytime I have a new website to host, I just nvim is just one step. Sorry?
So if you are using servers, so you need a maximum disk space, right? So what is your option?
I say I had this laptop. So in my my laptop came with NH hard drive. So I then moved to using an SSD. Upgrade to an SSD that has 512 GB of space. I understand I might need more space soon, but my solution to that is I just add another hard disk later on.
Maybe through USB or something.
Maybe through USB or just upgrade the one that is inside the NVMe one.
Hi. So, first of all, huge shout out. Like it was a really good knowledge sharing, and you spoke of streaming videos and watching movies together, right? So, won't there be a bandwidth limit? Like, if you want to stream videos or if you want to stream anything, you will be operating under a constrained bandwidth, right? So, will it be able to properly stream, and how can you upgrade it, for instance?
So at least, like, for one case, if you are using it in your home, obviously on a private network, it's not like it's not much of a limitation. I haven't tried it out, but what I have noticed is that, and what Arya in the audience told me was that Airtel, at least Airtel, doesn't do throttling very well. And with the static IP, they also sometimes enable gigabit connections, like even on smaller plans. So that you could probably exploit that. But I think streaming would not be as good as Netflix, but it will be reasonably good. There'll be trade-offs.
That's it.
Awesome presentation. For a second, I thought you stole my laptop. Okay. So my doubt was regarding email, right? Most cloud providers, they don't let you host an email server. So do you have a solution
Yeah,
that would be
email
good?
is tricky. The reason is that, so I tried hosting an email server. I could only receive emails. The reason is that all of these spam checks, like Gmail has its own spam checker, they do IP whitelisting. So only some, and there's something called reputation. So only if you send a lot of good emails are you allowed to like not end up in spam, or sometimes they even entirely block you. And there's a lot of steps that you need to go through, DKI, MSPF, before you get to even that stage. So mail is messy. The solution I have found is you get a subscription from some service. Mailjet is one I have heard of. Not open source, but you can subscribe to them and host your own client, and that works.
So will the mail still be secure from the provider, or can they read the mails and things like that?
That I'm not sure of. I think that would depend on the provider. So because you're relaying emails through them, I think it would really depend on the provider. But now you do have those encrypted SMTP, so I'm not sure.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you for this.
Yep. A quick announcement. We have a special guest that Kaustubh is not aware of from the Himalayas, and they bring with it a message that we have a 5-minute break right now if you want to go outside and take a break. The reunion.
We can have one last question.
Yes, we can still have questions. If you want to go outside, you can do that. And I also hope our guest mentioned that we do not support piracy at FOSS United.
Yes, we do not support piracy.
Yeah.
Okay, if you have any questions, you can.
Yeah, I just have one question.
Okay.
So basically, thank you for this presentation. It was really informative. And so, are you concerned about the security implications of like opening up a port to your like private network kind of like? Have you thought of any?
I can't see you.
I'm here, back. Sorry, at the back.
Okay, yes. Yeah, so when you, that's why I only opened 80 and 443 when I was demonstrating it. And I think that's a good practice that if you do self-host, you should follow. open as few ports as you can on the router. And the good thing about port forwarding is that because I'm not directly exposing my server, I'm not risking the threat that if I accidentally leave a port open on my laptop, it might get exposed. That's an advantage of using port forwarding.
Okay. Okay, thank you. Like, have you considered something like CrowdSec or fail to ban, like that will actually like block bad IPs and stuff like that? Like, yeah, it's just a general question. But I guess port forwarding works too.
Yeah, I haven't needed anything like that yet.
Thank you.
Hi, you spoke about a hosting server on mobile phones, right? So were that using Termux or something like that?
Yeah, one of the solutions was using Termux. I think it might be easier to do it with like Ubuntu on phone though.
So there is no hardware that's supporting Ubuntu. Like right now, I didn't see any mobile phones that are currently available in India that support Ubuntu phone touch.
You can install Ubuntu on your, like you flash a ROM. You can
Huh.
There's also the Mecha table outside. They have Debian on small devices.
One more thing, I tried actually forwarding the port on my home router, but I couldn't find that option. I think the hardware is limiting that option, right?
Do you have a static IP?
I don't have one.
I didn't access the portal before I got the static IP. So, but I doubt that they will let you control the IP ports if you don't pay for having that IP to yourself. Because what generally tends to happen is an IP is shared between a few consumer routers. So, for example, you and your neighbors probably share the same IP.
Thanks.
Hi, so I actually have the task of setting up a Moodle website, which is a learning management system. It's like the colleges and all use set up the course in it, and basically it's a website that will be visited by upwards of 1,000 people. So, do you think it's sustainable to do it on a self-hosted laptop, old laptop?
Yeah, easily. I remember there was some study about what you could do with like 1 GB VPS, and it could easily support upwards of 1,000 requests. But at the same time, I think it would also depend on what software is being used and if it's optimized enough. I think the database queries often tend to become a bottleneck. But my guess is that if that's reasonably good, supporting that should be should be okay.
It works in the LAMP system, like and it's by itself Moodle is quite the heavy software. So that's what I'm concerned about. I could just buy a hosting service and just forget about it, but that's just like a bit boring.
Yeah, I don't think bandwidth should be a limitation in this case. So should probably work, but you can try it out and.
Yeah. Thank you.
If you have more questions, you can connect with him outside.
Okay, please find me, and I would love to. If you are excited to self-host, I would love to tell you whatever you want to know.